afternoon, students. How are you doing today? Hope you are well. I am Mrs. Ibe Angela, your business studies teacher. Before we go into what we have today, you remember sometime in our JSS2 that we treated a topic, source documents, which is where one of the original documents of every business and where we record the first-hand information of every transaction. And you also remember that from the source document that we posted into special journals. And from that special journals, we also learned that we have the debit and the credit side, which the debit side is the receiver and the credit side is the giver. And that brings us to the topic we have today, which is ledger entries. Now, there is no way you can just come and start posting in your ledger if you don't have an original information or you don't have where you must have gotten your information from. So today we'll be looking at ledger entries. And where do we get the entries or the information we post in our ledger? We get them from our source document. And at the end of today's lesson, you should be able to define ledger entries and also identify the items on a ledger and also classify ledger accounts. We're starting from the first subtopic, which is the meaning or definition of ledger. What is a ledger? A ledger, simply put, is the principal book in which accounts are transferred from journal entries, just as I've told you earlier on. And it usually has numbered pages for easy identification. What do I mean by that? That the information you post in your ledger is gotten from our journals. And ledger is specifically used for business transactions for proper identification. With your ledger entries, you'll be able to identify whatever it is that is happening in your business transaction. And if you look at the board, you will see a typical example of a ledger account shown. Now, we have, if you look at this ledger account, it is divided into two equal parts, the left-hand side and the right-hand side. When we have at the left-hand side the debit entry, or you can just use DR as an abbreviation for it, and you have at the right-hand side the credit entries. Now, I want you to note one thing, that whatever that is seen in the debit side or in the debit entry is also seen in the credit side. What do I mean by that? A typical ledger account has how many columns? It has 8 columns, 4 on each side, 4 on the credit side and 4 on the debit side. If you look at the debit side, you will first of all see the number 1 thing on the column here, which is the date. After the date, which is where you write down the date of that transaction. That is the exact date we want to record that ledger entry. Then the next one is the particulars. What do I mean by particulars? The item you are trying to record, the name of the transaction or the name of the item you are trying to record. Now, folio. If you look at, there's nothing under the folio. What do you record under this folio? Under folio, you remember I told you that you cannot just manufacture things and put into your ledger account, that you have to get them from the source document. Now, under this folio is where you get the number of that page that you are getting your information from the source document from. That is where folio comes in. That is the number you put under your folio column. Then you have the Naira and Kobo sign, which is the amount of the transaction. The same thing is applicable to the credit side. And note that entries on the left side are debit entries, while the entries on the right-hand side are credit entries, just like I've told you. So by me looking at this, you've seen a typical example of a ledger account. And that brings us to the next thing we have, which is classification of ledger accounts. How do we classify our ledger accounts? Ledger accounts are classified into 2 major categories. What are these major categories? The personal account and the impersonal account. Before I go to the personal and impersonal account, I want to quickly show you a drawing of how the classification of a ledger account looks like. Here, I have something like this. I have something like this. Okay, this is how we classify our ledger account. Now, you have on top of this place, we have the first column, we have the ledger account. And I told you that the ledger account is divided into two. The first one is the personal and the second one impersonal account. Now, under the personal account, it is also divided into two. The debtors and the creditors. Sorry. Creditors. Now, the impersonal account is also divided into two, the nominal and the real account. Real account and nominal So looking at our board now, we'll see a typical example of a ledger account. A ledger account which is divided into two equal parts, the personal and the impersonal account. And under the personal account, we have the debtors and the creditors. Then under the impersonal account, we have the real and nominal account. So going back to our explanation, which is the two classification of ledger account, then we'll move forward to explain the personal account and what creditors and debtors means. Now, what are personal accounts? Just like the name implies, personal. If I should ask you, what do you mean by personal? What does it mean? Personal account simply consists of those accounts in which transactions with persons or other business and organizations are recorded. The transaction you have with people or other business transactions, your own personal record of the transaction you have with other business transactions or your other customers. Now, and these personal accounts also consist of the records of the debtors. Who are your debtors? Those that are owing the company. Everybody that is owing your business is your debtor. While creditors are those that you are owing. Do you understand? So the two main categories of personal accounts are debtors, those that are owing you, and creditors, those you are owing. An example of An example is the capital account. Because why is the capital account an example? Because it is an account in which the value of the entrepreneur's investment in the business is recorded. Remember what I've told you about capital. That is the worth of your business. Everything your business is worth. That is all the necessary things that you put in place to make sure that your business is moving on. Having looked at the personal account, we move on to the impersonal account. What do we mean by impersonal account? Impersonal account relates to our assets, our liabilities, our incomes, and our expenses. They can be broken down into two. One, real account. What do we mean by real account? Real account has to do with our assets and our examples. Example, the furniture in your office, that is the equipment in your office, and the loan account, that is the loan that you are owing a bank, maybe the money you borrowed from a bank or something. All those ones are classified under real account. Now, nominal account relates to the income and expenses of your business. Example, your sales and your salaries. Remember, sales is an income because it is what is coming into your business. While expenses are everything that is going out of your business. Like if you have workers in your business, you have to pay them salary. And on paying them, you are giving out something. So those ones are under nominal account. And with this, we've come to the end of what we have today. I believe that if you don't remember anything, that you should remember that ledger entries doesn't fall from anywhere. That rather that you get the information you post in your ledger from your source document and from source documents or your special journals. And we've also looked at the various classification of accounts, which are personal and impersonal accounts. And under personal account, we have debtors and creditors. And under impersonal account, we have real and nominal accounts. So with this, I want you to look at the assignments on the board. I want you to, number one, define a ledger in your words, in your own word, define ledger for me. Then the second one is to draw a standard ledger draw and label it the way it's supposed to be. Don't omit anything. Thank you very much and see you in our next meeting.